Namato Ratana Tayasa. May I pay homage to Triple Zem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. My respect goes to my parents and my teachers. Hello, good evening, everyone. So today is the 15th, the Monday, the 15th of February 2021. And this is Ajahn Sujan from Varapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. As usual, I'm here with you all tonight. Hello, Margaret. I hope that you're keeping well, and snow beginning to melt, and roads are getting a bit ready. And meanwhile, you can see, if you're going out, that along the road, both sides of the road, there are plenty of snow that's piled up. So this is the time. Hello everyone. Now today I am going to read this sutta, the discourse called the Brahma, and this is sutta number 18. And this is a quite interesting sutta actually. It talks about how the celestial beings come. Normally, the Brahma is known as the greatest deity in Hinduism, one who created the whole world. So there are three, called a Trinity, like similar in Christianity. So Trinity here is, one is called Brahma, and then the second one is called Vishnu, and the third one is called Mahesh, or the Lord Shiva. So Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer, and then the Mahesh, or the Lord Shiva, is a destroyer. But quite funny actually, you know, if you have been traveling to Asia, particularly like India or Southeast Asia, like in Nepal, there will be a number of temples dedicated to the Lord Shiva, not to the Lord Brahma, one who created the whole world according to this Hindu cosmology. And then there are a few numbers of Vishnu, or the Lord Vishnu's temple, and again that's not purely dedicated to the Lord Vishnu, but it will be dedicated to its incarnations, like the Rama, the Lord Rama, the Lord Krishna, like that. And again, among those reincarnations, only two gods, so-called Lord Rama and Lord Krishna, are well respected in the community. And that's why in Hinduism, Brahma known as the highest god. Whereas when we look at the Buddhist scripture, what we find here, that Brahma quite often comes to speak with the Buddha and converse in different topics. So it's quite interesting to know that Brahma, as being a person who has created, and yet people will respect him very little. It seems like someone who creates, its job is done and no need to think about. Yeah, no need to think about that person who has given birth. And the one thing that needs to be worried and then needs to be frightened of is the ending. So that's why you see lots of temples dedicated to the Lord Shiva. And when we look at the Buddhist scripture, there is no records of Lord Shiva or Lord Vishnu, or any incarnations of the Lord Vishnu. But there are plenty of stories of the Lord Brahma coming down from the heavens, celestial heavens, called the Brahma Loka, to speak with the Buddha. And this is one of that discourses, and it starts off with like this. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Uruvela on the bank of the river Narendra, at the foot of the Gothard banyan tree, just after he had become fully enlightened. So this is referring to the Buddha Gaya, where now become the site of a pilgrimage. And Buddhists from all around the world every year traveling to pay respect and spend some times at the vicinity where the Buddha attained the enlightenment, and that is the place called Uruvela, and nowadays famously known as the Buddha Gaya. And there is also one thing we have to remember. Sometimes we feel very down and we don't want to practice meditation. There is no encouragement and there is no motivation to practice. And it is suggested that if you go to such places where you can link with the Buddha and Buddha's teachings, and with that you will gain some form of a motivation and encouragement to continue practicing. So that's why this Buddha Gaya became the central of a Buddhist practices. So people around the world, Buddhists around the world, always will to travel to Buddha Gaya. And I even heard that in Sri Lanka in the past, people would even sell their houses, sell their lands, simply to go to the Buddhist pilgrimage sites, hoping that it brings more merits and it brings more reflections and have an opportunity to be close with the Buddhist sites and Buddha himself. And with that, they will gain more merits and more understanding about the Buddha. So that's why whenever we feel depressed or we feel not motivated to practice the Dhamma, we have to go to somewhere where we can be motivated, and that is the Buddhist sites. So that's another reason why Buddhists from around the world would prefer to go to visit the Buddha Gaya. And nowadays, before the pandemic, every December time for 10 days, there is international Tipitaka chantings too. But it's been since last year, there wasn't the ceremony. And this year also, not sure whether they're going to have it or not. So that is the place where the Buddha get enlightened. And then says, then while the Blessed One was alone in seclusion, a reflection arose in his mind. Thus, this is the one-way path for the purification of our beings, for the overcoming of a sorrow and lamentation, for the passing away of a pain and displeasure, for the achievement of the method for the realization of a Nibbana. That is the four-establishment of mindfulness. So, Buddha is reflecting his own achievement that the practice of a four-establishment of a mindfulness has brought the or achieved the enlightenment. Yeah? And while he was contemplating on, and further saying that the contemplating on the body, contemplating feelings and the mind and the phenomena with ardent and clearly comprehending, mindful of it, and then having removed the covetousness and displeasure in regards to the world, and that basically has given him this inspiration to overcome all the defilements, and that's how he became the Buddha, the one who is enlightened. And when he was reflecting that, and further passage say, then the Brahma Sahampati, so it's one of the Brahmas in Brahma Loka. So Brahma, according to the Buddha's teachings, or in Buddhism, is not a highest a God who will never be died. Actually, the attainment of a Brahma, according to the Buddhist perspective, anyone who has attained the jhanas, it's called arupa jhanas, then they have capability of reborning in those states. Yeah? So those who have attained the jhanas and are all the samapati jhanas, then at the end of their the destruction of this body in this life, they will reborn simultaneously or spontaneously in the Brahma world. And then their lifespan is so vast that some of the Brahmas even think that, again, in the Brahma world, according to the Buddhist cosmology, suggests that there are so many various stages, stages and different capability and qualities of the Brahma too. So that's why some of them even think that they have created the world, because the world is such that arises, and then remains for some years, and then vanishes, and then after that vanish, new world arises, and goes on and on and on, and eventually these Brahma, one of them, or many of them, would think that, oh, they have seen how world is created and how world is vanishing. And eventually they think that they are the one who created it. So that's how the perception develops. Okay? And similarly, this one of the Brahma, called the Brahma Sahampati, having known with his own mind the reflection in the Blessed One's mind, just as quickly as a strong man might extend his drawn-in arm, or drawn in its extended arm, disappear from the Brahma world and appears before the Blessed One. So Brahma, he descends from the heaven and come down to the Buddha and to speak with the Buddha. So he arranged his upper robe over one shoulder. So he basically, suppose when we are going out as a monk again, we normally wrap like this, so the whole robe will be wrapping all like this. And then whenever we come into the temple, or whenever we have to pay respect to someone, we normally reduce one hand like this and then put it like this. So this is called arrange his upper robe over one shoulder. So like that. And then raise his joint hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One. So basically he raised his hands like this as a salutation and paid respect to the Blessed One. And he was also saying that, so it is, Blessed One, so it is. So it is. The Blessed One and said to him, and then is so fortunate that the Blessed One has attained the enlightenment, and you have understood this. And here, one thing we have to also remember, that at the time of the Buddha enlightened, after he gained enlightenment, he remained around the vicinity of the Bodhi tree for 7 weeks. And each week he reflected in different teachings, and also met different people, such as when he was, after he attained the enlightenment, he was reflecting and sitting, meditating, and glorifying the Bodhi tree. And at that time, he also reflected the dependent origination in 3 ways. So first, the dependent origination, he was reflecting from the arising perspective. And then after he was reflecting and recollecting and analyzing the Paticcasamuppada in an arising way. And then later on, he reflected on the vanishing way, or called the or ending. And Nirodhavara, so ending. So, and then after he was contemplating on that, and later on he contemplated both the arising and vanishing of and arising and vanishing of the Paticcasamuppada, the system of that. And further on, after recollecting and reflecting for 7 days on the Paticcasamuppada, he moves into another direction, another place from the same vicinity. So he went to stay in, it's called Azapala, not far away from where he attained the enlightenment. And there he discussed with one of the Brahmins, one of the priests, and then he was asking that how one be called a good Brahmin. And at that time the Buddha said that a person who hasn't got greed, hatred and delusion, and then he hasn't got the conceit and wrong view, that person should be called the Brahmin. So that was the 2nd week. And he was again having this conversation, and after the conversation he was sitting meditating again. And further on, further the next, it's like a 3rd or 4th week, he went on sitting meditation in under the tree. It's called a Muchalinda. And it happened that as soon as he started meditating, torrential rain fell. And when it was torrential rain was falling, it's called a Muchalinda Naga, the serpent, one of the serpents who lives around. This serpent comes out from that lake or the pond and circle the Buddha's whole body, protecting from the rain for all 7 days. And this is quite a bit of some form of like a magical thing. And when I went to India last time, I even had a chance to go and see that pond nearby where the Buddha was sitting meditating, and the Muchalinda snake came and wrapped him, giving him a protection from all the rains and getting him warm. So sometimes you may have seen Buddha is sitting on the serpent's body, and a serpent or the naga is just protecting from the rain. So that is that week he came and protect the Buddha. And at that time, after the 7th day, the Buddha taught this serpent or the naga, Muchalinda Naga, the 5 types of happiness. And this 5 types of happiness is quite interesting, and the 5 types of happiness, it says, so seclusion is happiness for one contented. Seclusion is happiness for one contented. So one has to be content to live and happy to live in a seclusion, living in a seclusion life. And that's one of the reflections of the monks, that every monk should reflect, that in a solitude, the living in a solitude or the seclusion should be pleasurable. And the second is by whom Dhamma is learned and who has seen. So that's a person who has seen the Dhamma and learn, one should be delighted to live in a secluded life. And the second it says that, and friendliness towards the world is a happiness for him who is forbearing with living beings. So that's the second one. So forbearance, and here the forbearance is free from any thoughts of ill will or harming any beings, but you have this friendliness and a loving mind. You have a sense of a loving kindness to everyone. Then that's another way of having the happiness. Further say, this interest in the world is happiness for him that his surmounted sense desires. So one has overcome the lustful desires that arose through the senses that comes to contact with the outside world. So, and having this no passion towards any thing that comes to contact with the 5 senses, and there is no lust, and that also basically free from lustful desires is the happiness. And then further it says that but to be rid of the conceit, I am, that is the greatest happiness of all. So here, before that, it's saying one is free yourself from the lustful desires, and then the second is overcoming. So overcoming from that lustful desires, and completely ability to get rid of this lustful thoughts from your mindset, then that is the happiness. And the last one is ability to free yourself from the concept of I making my or I am and I am me, or it's like egocentric. When we have an ego, we always think that I am the best, and we look down upon people and other people. So basically overcoming this ego and developing the sense of eco, So you are a part of the system rather than the system. And that is the ways to gain the happiness. And that's that the Buddha taught to the Naga, the serpent. And then later on, after 1 week of staying with the Naga in that Mochalinda place, he moves on into another place called Rajayana, and where he was again meditating. At that time, two businessmen from so-called Ukkala, and nowadays believed that it is in Myanmar, in Burma. They were a businessman traveling in India at that time, and on the way, after the business completed, they were on the way back to Ukkala in present-day Myanmar. And when they were walking back to the Myanmar, they saw the Buddha was calmly meditating, and they were so amazed in the middle of the forests. So they approached and spoke with the Buddha, and then after hearing the teachings of the Buddha, they become very fascinated the teachings of the Buddha. And when they feel that fascination, and they also offered with a compassion, or kind of with a compassion to the Buddha that he is living alone in the forest. So they offer, it's called a sattu matu. Yeah, so it's a rice made of milk, and also it has got a coconut, cardamom, and the ancient spice. And then you make it, and you make with the rice, and after that you make it dried. So these two businessmen offered to the Buddha as two types of food. One was the sattu matu, that was the dried, and another one was the powder. And after that, they also become the disciples of the Buddha, and they were the first disciples who have taken the refuge on the Buddha and the Dhamma alone. And it is said that before they left the Buddha, they requested something as a remark or for the memory. And at that time, the Buddha simply took his hair, he pulled his hair, the Buddha pulled his hair from his head, and then he gave it to these two businessmen. And when they were returning to Myanmar or Burma, they informed to the king at that time that they have received such a great valuable relics of the Buddha. And then the king also came to receive the relics of the Buddha, and then build the huge pagodas. And that's why in Myanmar it's been a history that there are so many pagodas, golden pagodas all over the country. And one of the very famous pagoda where they kept the Buddha's relics, the hair, the so-called Kesa Dhatu, we call it Kesa Dhatu, the relics of the Buddha, and the hair, preserved in that giant pagodas. And one of them I have visited, it's called a Svetagong. This is so huge in the middle of the Rangoon. And you can see that from far and wide in the night. It just illuminates by the lights. And if you walk around, it takes half an hour to complete one round. Half an hour. And there will be a lot of people chanting, meditating, performing ceremonies, and like that. And this is one of the greatest monument. And they say that it has got a huge, massive number of all the gems and different jewelries that was given or offered to the Buddha. And meanwhile, all other hairs distributed around in Myanmar and build different pagodas, and some of them are golden pagoda, the true golden pagodas, made or the color the plate, the golden plates, been covered, used to cover the whole pagoda, and so beautiful. And I was really amazed how faithful and how devoted they were. And sadly now it's a military government, and again, I don't want to go into deeper in that subject, but this is how it's happening, and it's so sad. But however, the Buddhism is very strong in Myanmar in terms of the devotion and preservation. So that's how the Tapasu and Balika, these two businessmen, got these relics and established the Buddhist pagodas where they preserved the Buddha's relics. And further, there are other weeks that the Buddha stayed and reflected. And one of the nights that Buddha was thinking that it is very subtle teachings that the people will not understand it. It will be very difficult for people to understand. And then here, and in that case, the Buddha said that it would not be ideal for him to go and teach, because people have got this dust or the desire, not able to understand the subtle Dhamma. And having understood that, then again another Sahampati Brahma descends from the heavens and come to request to the Buddha. And that has been a tradition that every time, particularly in Thailand, every time when the monks are going to give a formal teachings, then the people or the devotees will recite the words so-called Brahma Jalokadhipati Sahampati, so on, which basically means the Brahma Sahampati has descended and paid respect to the Buddha and requested for the teachings. And then after that, Buddha, in his compassionate eyes, surveyed and realized that there are three types of people, and there are people who can understand. And with that, Buddha, again, the aparuta tesang, the amata dhammang. So basically means those who have ears, let hear the deep teachings for the liberation. So I end here for tonight's talk, and thank you everyone for listening, and may you all be well and happy. In a few moments' time, we're going to have evening chanting and guided meditation. You're most welcome to join with us today. So tomorrow there won't be a talk, but we will have the discussion after the meditation. You can join the Zoom meetings. So I end here. May you all be well and happy. May the Buddha Dhamma Sangha bless you. Sadhu. Thank you.